need to go in order to accomplish the task that you're after, the goal that you're after. And that we don't have enough information yet to say how far that would be. So that's actually that question leads right into where we'd want to go next. Before we go there, though, are there any other questions or things? Yeah, Peggy.
Are you going to address things like your internal dialogue will run along and a belief will pop out, and you know intellectually it sounds kind of silly, but also on a kinesthetic level, that's not how you operate.
What Peggy's saying is that sometimes you get this interesting thing where your internal dialogue has a certain belief. Suddenly pops out some belief like, oh, you can't do that because you're too stupid or something. And you go, that intellectually she says that that's not true, but on a kinesthetic level it feels true. Well, she said, are we going to address that kind of thing? What we are going to do, yes, is address that, but we're going to do it from a verbal level. So clearly that is a very common element of beliefs. I think the important point also to mention in regards to your question is that what she's raising here also tells us something very important about beliefs, which is that they don't have to be logical. They don't have to relate to reality in this form, nor do they have to be logical. That's precisely what makes them a belief, is that they defy logic and they defy reality. So, yeah, we will be addressing that kind of a thing, although we're not going to be doing there are belief change techniques that I've developed and belief integration techniques, although that's not exactly where we're going to focus here. But we will be attempting to influence, like if some belief pops up in your internal dialogue, how you might go about using sleight of mouth to shift the kinesthetic impact that has. Obviously, one key to success is to have your intellectual, your emotional, and your verbal all aligned together. When they all agree, you're in good shape. Most of the time people experience problems is when they look at things one way and their voice tells them something else and their feelings are kind of caught in between or something. And these are the kind of things that, when we start thinking about our goals, what we want to accomplish with these verbal maneuvers, we want to try to bring some kind of an alignment to these different issues. So we will address it, but not from the level of like re-imprinting or something, which is another kind of a belief change. Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions, clarifications, things that came up from doing this? Stand here. Okay. So, what do we do with it now? So now you've got resourceful beliefs, you've got limiting beliefs, you've got them kind of laid out in evidences and causes. So now what do we want to do with them? Well, one thing we want to do is if it's a limiting belief, we want to find out some ways to open that up, to add more options to it. And by the way, you could use sleight of mouth to try and challenge beliefs or to try and argue with people, but I find that the most appropriate way to use it is to literally give you different perspectives, different frames on a particular limiting belief. If it's a resourceful belief, what you want to do is to start to use that belief and spread it to other places, to take the resourceful belief and make it connect in with other things, to make it spread, to make it be more of a foundation for other changes that you'd like to make. And that's kind of going to be the two large frames we want to use here. If it's a limiting belief, we want to open it up a little bit. If it's a resourceful belief, we want to start to use it as a foundation for other changes and to use it as a leverage point to make other changes. On this first page of the handout, it lists some basic strategies for influencing beliefs with sleight of mouth. And what I'd like to do is to just review those. There's sort of 4 of them, and these relate to the specific verbal patterns. These here are strategies. They're not verbal patterns. They're things that you can do with these verbal patterns. You'll notice that the first one is chains of meaning. Now, let's take a belief like if somebody says, well, NLP is dangerous because it's manipulative. And somebody laid this belief on you and you do NLP and you wanted to kind of open up some options there. Chains of meaning would be, you might want to say something like, well, since NLP is dangerous, that means that it's very risky. And of course, risk-taking is something that's necessary for change. So therefore, NLP is necessary because it's manipulative. So, which, yeah, right. Yeah, that'll take your head off, I see. All right. But all you've done is, you said, since it's dangerous, that means that it's risky, and since risks are necessary for change, then, because you say all these things are equal, you're saying this means that, therefore, the fact that NLP is manipulative means it's necessary. Now, some of you noticed that you went, huh? How did you get there? And yet, you've done what's a simple logical procedure. I mean, let's take one, a kind of a classic example that Richard used to, the new Richard doesn't do this, but Richard used to have to defend himself in this way. Periodically, people would complain that he was being mean to people, and that was a bad thing to do. That he would yell at people. That was a bad thing to do. So to make a chain of meaning, he might say, well, I mean, being mean is expressing your feelings, and since expressing your feelings is an important way of being genuine and honest, that I'm actually a genuine and honest person. So in other words, that you take one of these statements here, you say, well, this is the same as that, or it means that, and that means that. Therefore, this really, and you'll notice here it says, if I take an A is negative, you say mean things. And I say, well, A means expressing feelings, B, and B means being genuine and honest, C, which is a positive, then actually being mean is being positive. And that's, I mean, it's a basic strategy that you can utilize. Now, by the way, it doesn't have to be defensive. I remember one of the times I had when I was a kid, I was first learning to play basketball, and we had a real tough workout, and I was just exhausted and tired. And I said to the coach, I said, Josh, look at me, I'm covered with sweat. And the coach said, well, that's not sweat, that's satisfaction. So in other words, shifted around, again, a content reframe. It took the content, and this is basically what this chains of meaning are about, is means something else. Something that starts perhaps with a negative implication, ends with something that has a positive implication. So that's one of the basic strategies. Incidentally, it doesn't necessarily have to do with reality. Remember, it has to do with relationships. And it has to do with the fact that thinking, especially when it comes to large levels of meaning, is quite fuzzy and is not very precise. And the interesting thing about life is that we have to make most of our important decisions from an imprecise framework as opposed to knowing precise things, because we're just not, the way our senses work and the way that information comes in is distorted. If you think about what happened in Los Angeles day before yesterday, where they had the earthquake, people have to make decisions. They don't know what's happening. I mean, imagine if you're in one part of Los Angeles, you don't know what's really happening in other places. So you're going to have to do it based upon beliefs that you're going to have about what's going on and how people are going to react, that have no precise basis in fact. And you have to make the decision right at that moment before you have all the precise information. So what I'm saying is, these might seem like they're strange, but they're a necessary part of the human meaning-making process, and they can be used just as strongly as reality. In fact, beliefs, and the interesting things about beliefs, is that they can